Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our Microsoft Azure and StorSimple webinar. So today we're joined by Paul Woodward and Ben Watson from Microsoft, Mark Esmiley from Systems Up, and John Garidis here from Byte Software Services. So on that note, I'm now going to hand over to Paul from Microsoft.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for attending this session. Just to give you a quick view of the Microsoft and the StorSimple team, my name is Paul Woodward. I'm the sales lead for StorSimple here in the UK, supported by Ben Watson, who's the technical lead. We work very, very closely with Bytes and with our StorSimple partners to deliver StorSimple and its messages. Just a bit of history on StorSimple and not really to steal any of Mark's thunder, but StorSimple was an acquisition that Microsoft acquired about two and a half years ago. We acquired the intellectual property rights of a technology called StorSimple, which is really a cloud integrated storage appliance. And what we're trying to do is to get our customers to look at different ways of acquiring and of managing storage, both on-prem and in the cloud. Microsoft over the last 2 years have innovated on the technology that we acquired 2 years ago to the point where we now have a very, very stable and scalable solution, being the 8000. So we've now innovated on that and integrated that very, very closely into the Windows Azure platform. So today is really a view of giving you an idea of what StorSimple does. We work very, very closely with Systems Up and the partner community. So I'm now going to hand over to Mark, who will go through the presentation. And as Sarah said, there's a session at the end for Q&A, both around the commercials, which I'll cover at the end, and also around the technical. So I'll hand over to Mark and leave you in his capable hands.
Thanks for that, Paul. Morning, everyone. So, as Paul was saying, I'm going to be covering more the technical background to StorSimple. I'm mainly going to be focusing around the 8000, but I will be mentioning the 7000. So, what I really want to focus on is the new developments and how the integration of cloud service and on-premise storage is taken to new levels with this product. So, this is the agenda that we're going to be going through today. Essentially, it will be reviewing the current storage challenges customers are having, and we've seen in the each of our customers having, and how the Microsoft StorSimple solution actually counteracts those and enables that hybrid storage that's a unique offering to enable those workloads to be more useful and enable the actual device to dive a little deeper into the storage platform. So I'll focus around the technical background, the application workload, and these areas. So hopefully you're all familiar with Azure. This is more of a screenshot of what's available today. As you can see, it's a lot more than just storage. So the StorSimple solution will map obviously into that middle area based on the blob storage. But as you can see, the actual cloud that Azure is offering, Microsoft are offering, is expanding quite rapidly now to obviously infrastructure as a service and other areas. So I don't really want to focus on that too much today, but that was just really to give everyone an overview of what's available out there today with Microsoft Azure. So current challenges is storage growth. Whether you think it's 20, 30, 40, 50, it's always difficult to actually nail down that figure and understand how your applications are developing over time. The problem with storage today is that you have to buy for that growth rate. So essentially you are purchasing storage that you don't actually require at this point in this time. And when you do, or if you do hit a peak in storage, you have to essentially upgrade your SAN, which may be buying new hardware, maybe actually doing a full upgrade, which is not obviously the cheapest things to do. And that also may in turn buying more licenses and more administration time. So essentially it's a heavy cost to the business, and actually not just cost in figures for buying storage, but the the management of that elements around that. So kind of how your infrastructure will sprawl throughout the area, and particularly constraints you may be having wrapping around. Another aspect is your data recovery. A lot of people have to buy storage that actually will enable them to be able to recover their data at fast points, and kind of the recovery point objective has to be quite low. And this is a kind of area that IT is kind of almost being forced into as IT has grown in itself. So it's kind of, that's the current snapshot really. So this is StorSimple. So essentially, it's a physical array, storage array, and it connects over an iSCSI network, and it can map obviously to Windows, Linux, VMware, Hyper-V hosts, and essentially it's just a simple iSCSI mapping, so that you don't really need to redo your infrastructure. It's an enterprise class SAN, and essentially it is it's a hybrid connection to the Azure service. So what that's allowing you to do is actually communicate all your application storage and tier it off to the cloud. It's a hybrid storage solution essentially. So if I flick onto the next slide, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about how the actual device communicates. So essentially what's happening with the solution is it's actually always coordinating with the solid state disks. Now how the StorSimple device is split up, it's essentially it's an SSD kind of cache or flash cache, if you can imagine, with a SAS background, and then a cloud hybrid connection at the back. So all your applications and your services are always writing and reading from that SSD element. And as data becomes, so that's can you classify that as your hot data. And as data becomes warmer or colder, you could say, it's tiered off to the SAS solution. And then essentially as the device becomes full, or as you start to take cloud snapshots, that data will be kept off-site in the Azure cloud. Now obviously that's a great example of how kind of just a normal tiering solution can change how your normal SAN will communicate. So this is enabling essentially your device and your applications to be snapshots and kind of stored off-site at a kind of a reliable data center. So comparing this with the kind of, I don't want to reference an old way of doing it, but probably the current way of doing it. This is the normal process we'd look at is how data is actually migrated off-site, how data is protected, and what kind of issues you have with that. I can see it's not really the simple process. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this and actually have done this, but kind of enabling your storage to be split up to primary archival storage, making sure that your backups are going to tape, for instance, so we might have a disk-to-disk backup with tape involved, and then actually getting your data off-site in case you actually have a data failure, or even sorry, a site failure. And this is something that we try, it's always, as IT architects, we always try to avoid our systems going down or our data being protected. And unfortunately, this is, quite a long process, not only, kind of on the admin phase, but also on the cost element, because there's different factors to vary in there. So the cloud, essentially, it is being developed to counteract these constraints. So it's allowing you to scale your storage, to actually kind of bring your storage closer to home, so the speed and response is a lot faster. You don't have to wait for data to be returned from a tape, and it's obviously at reduced cost. So there's kind of interesting facts here. So if we look at a normal capacity growth, if we say 50–60% per year, and then we actually look at the kind of how much data is actually local and how much data is actually used. So what we can see here is essentially this is how we split it up with the StorSimple solution. Your local storage is kept locally on the SAS and the SSD element, and your cloud archival data that's no longer required is actually tiered off into the Azure cloud set. Now this is the beauty of it, is because you can, if it becomes warm data, it will be pulled back into the local cache. So this is more of a kind of a fact. It's less about StorSimple. But you can see that the Azure cloud is growing. A heavy competitor, what everyone will always personally asks me is, what about Amazon S3? Now, obviously, you can see, based on that fact there's quite a leap that Microsoft has taken, and quite a lot of objects that are currently being held in blob storage. So it's not something necessarily new, but it's something that's definitely expanding with benefits to the customers and clients. One very key interesting fact about the Azure blob-based storage is that each of the data centers holds 3 copies of your data. So essentially, every time you're doing that snapshot, it's actually been replicated 3 times. Now, this is based on locally redundant storage. So these are kind of mapped to a blob storage account that sits in Azure. But you can see with the SLAs there that your data has been copied 3 times off-site, that you can be confident that your data can actually be recovered. And if one of those, if you kind of hit an issue with one of those, it'll be easily recovered. And the other advantage, with a simple kind of click of the button, you can enable geo-replication, and that will basically give you 6 copies of your data. And that will be splitting it throughout 2 Azure data centers. Now, obviously, this protects you not only from your site failure, but also protects you from an Azure site failure as well. I mean, I don't want to kind of honest approach, really. You know, it is IT. IT will fail at some point in some time, so you always want to have that resilience built in. And with this service, it allows you to actually expand the solution quite easily, and it also allows your data to be protected. So this is just essentially a snapshot of how this solution is working with kind of on-premise solutions now. So be it physical or virtual environments you run in-house, you can see that the solution is just presenting it just as a normal disk. Now, obviously, this can be, you know, a disk to a Windows OS, Linux, VMware, or virtualization layer. Depending on what your solutions are, you can easily adapt it quite effortlessly. And as you can see, the total cost of ownership is running down. Basically, that is the key for this solution, is that you want to reduce your storage costs. The idea is that all your storage costs, you don't have to pay for tier 1, tier 2 disk arrays to host your archive and backup solutions. This is, you know, it's always difficult to move that data away, but with this solution, you're essentially tiering all that data that's called away from your on-premise SSD and SAS disks. So this is your cloud integrated storage. So you can see this is, as I kind of talked about before, this is what it's targeting. With your traditional lookout, it's quite difficult to, you know, do your tape backups. But with this solution, it's an automated tiering solution. It's reduced, it's thin, it's deduplicated data, it's encrypted, so you don't have to worry about protection of your data as well. That's a private key that's obviously exchanged between yourself and Microsoft, and that allows you to shift your data. So there you go, sorry. So I'll flick back to that. So this is what I was talking about the snapshot process earlier, and how it's how it's driving down, how it's actually the differences to the the normal off-site tape backup solution. So essentially, it's eliminating tape, which I know previously I've had to look at tape environments and manage them. They're not fun, and I don't think anyone really likes them personally, but maybe there's someone out there who does. So this is the cost breakdown, really, and the benefit breakdown, and how the solution is basically going to try and reach that 40-60% reduction in your storage costs. You know, as I touched on earlier, it's not just the actual cost of the raw tin or the data. It's that unknown aspect of getting rid of your replication, you know, for your other SAN arrays that you might actually have to host in a DR site, or even if you're lucky to have another DR site, you have to buy the tin and actually get the connections going between them. And it removes all your backup and your shipping and your disk-based backups as well. So it's a great solution for that. Essentially, this is kind of revisiting that how data is slowly tiered off. So you can see that the working data set there is quite small. These are just obviously just kind of case studies that we've acquired and worked through, and you can see that the hard disk actual area there is a little bit bigger, but the inactive data is actually quite large. So the hybrid connection to Azure is essentially to drive down that element, tier that solution off, and allow for your working data or your hot data or warm data to actually stay consistent and available to the application or services that need it. And this is how the solution essentially breaks down. So you can see the cloud there at the top. We've got the DR, the cloud apps, the test and dev, and the Microsoft Azure. And the bottom we've got your on-premise workloads. So as I've kind of said before, it's a varied workload. The StorSimple solution is kind of designed to meet, but it is certified with the VMware platform, the Microsoft platforms, and Linux platforms. Then obviously it kind of varies how you actually want to consume that within your environment. And as Paul touched upon before, with the original 7000s, this is one of the kind of the changes with the 8000s. So as you can see there, there's one Azure StorSimple Manager. It's managing multiple devices. With the 7000s, you had to manage them independently through the admin portal, or the admin URL for each device. With your Windows Azure account, you essentially tie the StorSimple 8000 device to it, and you can manage multiple. Well, you can manage a lot more than multiple actually. And the other benefit to that is that you get a StorSimple virtual device, which essentially is a virtual device to unencrypt your data in the Azure cloud set. So you can be taking cloud snapshots of your data from data center 1 and 2 in this instance, and you can actually restore your data and unencrypt it in the Azure cloud with the virtual StorSimple appliance. This allows you to obviously present your storage to infrastructure or platform services in Azure, which may help you migrate data or services if desired. Another advantage is that you can restore snapshots from data center 1 and implement them onto data center 2. So you can essentially move your data as long as the StorSimple devices are obviously connected to the cloud, using the StorSimple Manager without having to independently go to each individual StorSimple device, basically, compared to the 7000 that is. So here we go, kind of a breakdown again of the recovery. So as you can see, the recovery time for StorSimple is quite low, and that was what I kind of was explaining earlier about how it's only pulling down the data required. Now, obviously, these are based on certain loads and certain link speeds, but you can look at the reduction in recovery data, primary data. This is as well, if you were to have a failure of some sort. And how the data actually kind of essentially rapid recovery for your DR and testing. Now, this might not be something that you want to do, obviously restore data. Another advantage is you can restore data of a test platform, so you can actually run through your BCP plan without affecting your live data set, which is quite an advantage because obviously that won't be affecting your users. So this is kind of the breakdown of the kind of the storage demand, the consolidated management, and how that kind of can change your infrastructure. There's, essentially the device will sit on your environment or within your environment, and you don't need to worry about it running out of space. It's an automatically tiered solution. You don't need to kind of go into it and check your monthly kind of growth rate and say, okay, it's going to get to that point now. We better expand the solution. We better do this. You don't have to worry about any of that. It's an automatically kind of tier solution, which allows also ties into the Azure element, which gives you the alerting as well. So if you do get any issues with it, the Azure subscription holder and managers can easily get alerted via the monitoring and the tools built into that element. And as I touched upon earlier, it's different from the 7000s. You're managing it as a whole. You're essentially managing it from your Azure portal. So if you have 10, 20, 30 StorSimple devices, be it if that's your requirement, then you can manage all of them. And that's a kind of physical snapshot on the left-hand side there of the new arrays, the 8100 and the 86, and how they physically look. Sorry. A lot more performance has been put into these devices compared to the 7s. So, I mean, throughput has been something key that's been focused on these. So they're actually using a 10 gig backbone instead of the 1 gig backbone. So that you can imagine, obviously, a 10 gig iSCSI connection is going to hopefully give you that I/O required for your application and services. And essentially, all that is pure enterprise class storage. So when you kind of put these things together, it can accumulate more powerful workloads compared to the older generations, and possibly compared to your existing SAN infrastructure, depending on how large or small it is. And obviously, I don't want to keep going over it, but the integrated services on the right-hand side there is managing it from the actual cloud. So here's some facts about the 81 and the 8600. So you can see there you've got the kind of more expansion from the 7000s, and essentially the SSD volumes have been expanded, and the network cards are larger or kind of a higher spec. This is based on some deduplication and compression workloads. So the actual the max capacity may alter slightly depending on what workload you're using. If you're using multiple different workloads, you may not get the best deduplication compression ratio as if you're running the same platform, the same services throughout them. Again, as Sarah said, this will be recorded, so you'll be able to kind of get these facts and figures again from these slides. And this is the StorSimple virtual device. So you can see it's a little bit smaller. I mean, the purpose for this is to mount and unencrypt your data in the Azure cloud, so it doesn't need to be of the same performance of the actual physical devices. It's just running, I think if I remember correctly, it's an A4. Ben may correct me later on. I think it's an A4 machine running in Azure. So it's kind of configured with those settings. So the big question is that I always get asked is, where does it fit in? How do I use it, and what should I be using it for? It's always an interesting question to kind of go through because it obviously depends on your workload. Now, with the direct connection over the 10 gig connection, to your services, it allows you to obviously kind of expand that solution and have maybe a kind of higher IOPS requirement. But essentially, it is just for mapping your physical services and solutions. Some services should be used, and some investigations should be done on what you're actually running it on. I'll mention SQL as one of those, because that's always the first question I get asked. Should I put SQL environment on this? Is it fit for SQL? It's unfortunately one of those yes/no answers, because again, it depends on the workload. But essentially, if you can test it and manage it on the solution, then that's when you actually be able to see the kind of the real benefits of it. And here's some breakdowns of just some estimated costs. It's based on the 8100 over 3 years. So Paul can go into more detail about the pricing, but essentially you can see there what I'm really trying to highlight is the backup and discovery and the primary archival storage. You can see it's essentially it's zero. It's all included in the device. Your tiering, your cloud snapshots, your DR capability, that is consumed within that and the Azure service. So you're no longer having to pay for that. It's a one-off essentially cost for the StorSimple appliance, and that's allowing you to actually consume those. And something I'm sure Paul will go into more detail about, but something that's changed recently is the availability to use the credits across the Azure platform. So essentially, it's not tying you down to just the storage area. When you purchase the credits with the enterprise agreement, you're actually allowing it to be used across the virtual machine platform, SQL as a service, your mobile, analytics, integration, all those different areas that's kind of hosted within the Azure service. So it kind of allows you to actually start kind of getting a feel of the Azure cloud and potentially migrating or hosting some services of your own up there. So this is kind of coming to a close really with the kind of high-level breakdown. Essentially, it is a hybrid cloud solution. It's here to drive down storage costs. That's its main driver, and to actually enable you to have the functions built in from the cloud brought into your on-premise environment. So again, it's a hybrid solution. It's not full cloud, and it's not shifting all your data to the cloud. It's an actual kind of an enterprise class solution, and it's allowing you to kind of focus, get rid of all these these timing barriers, and focus more on the bespoke items that you need to focus on as a business. So no longer having to worry about the infrastructure, the growth, etc., the areas that I've touched on earlier. What you can really focus on is what you need to focus on, and become, maybe that might help you become a little bit more proactive instead of being reactive on the storage elements. So that's kind of me finished from a technical point. What I'd like to do is hand over to Paul. I'll flick on to the next slide, and he's going to go through the current deals and offers that are running on the StorSimple solution. And then we'll come back to Ben and myself regarding any questions. Obviously, Ben and me will focus on the technical bits, and maybe the commercial bits might be covered by Paul and potentially Ben as well. But thanks for your time, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.
Mark, hi. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that, and thank you very much for everyone staying on the call. Appreciate that. Mark, if you could just go to the commercial slide, thank you very much, and I'll go through this. So as Mark said, what we're trying to do is provide a single solution for on-prem performance and on-prem capability for our customers, with the ability to scale out to Windows Azure and to consume those other Azure services. So from a commercial model, as I said, the 7000 is a technology that we acquired about 2 years ago. It's still available as an offer, but we're seeing more of our customers take up the new 8000 offer. So if I look at the ASAP 60 offer, if you were to invest $60,000 into Windows Azure, so this is not for storage, so this is within the entire capabilities of Windows Azure. If you invested $60,000 in Azure, we will automatically or gift you a free StorSimple appliance. So it's a bit like if you buy a mobile phone, you get a free tablet with it. If you invest $60,000 with it within that Azure capability, will gift you the StorSimple appliance. So for $60,000, we'll give you the 8100 appliance. With that comes a year's worth of support, which is sort of a next business day best endeavor support. If you have Premier support, that will also automatically be upgraded to our Platinum support, which is a chargeable option, is $2,500. And what that gives you is on-site spares and the ability to replace any of those RAID 10 drives or SSDs or the hot swap power or fans yourselves. From a storage perspective, from that $60,000, we will charge you roughly $1 a gig a year, or $1,000 a terabyte a year, for data stored in Windows Azure. So for instance, if you invested $60,000, we'll give you the StorSimple appliance. If you were to have, say, 10 terabytes of data that you put on StorSimple and protected, and if we were to protect, say, for instance, 5 terabytes of data up in Azure, so we achieved a sort of a 2-to-1 dedupe compression ratio, we would charge you about $5,000 to protect that data in Dublin and Amsterdam. So what that gives you then is a pot of money, about $55,000 left to spend on any of the other Azure services that we offer. So for instance, things like Active Directory, websites, media services, virtual machines. So it's really sort of a pay-as-you-go capability within Windows Azure and the Azure services. But what we're doing is we're drawing down from that pre-commitment different levels of service as and when you consume them within the Azure portal. Same offer with the 8000, with the 8600, which is the bigger box. If you invest $100,000, we'll gift you the free StorSimple appliance. Again, it comes with the first year's support. You own the box on day one, so it can sit on within your data center. It's not something we're going to come and take back. It's not supplied to you as a service. And again, we'll charge you about $1 a gig a year or $1,000 per terabyte per year for data stored in Azure on a post-dedupe compression basis. We're not here just to deliver the box and say to our customers, get on with it. It's for you to understand how it works. So we also fund our partners in the partner community to come out and to deliver and to install and help with skills transfer around understanding the capabilities of Windows Azure and StorSimple, but probably more importantly to understand the option of doing something different, of taking a different approach on how we store data, how we tier data, and how we protect that data into Windows Azure. So really just a high level, $60,000 will gift you the 8100, $100,000 will gift you the 8600. We withdraw from that at the rate of $1 a gig or $1,000 a terabyte per year out of that pre-commitment, and then that leaves you the balance of the commitment to spend on other services. And we work very, very hard, both with Bytes and Systems Up, to enable you and give you the understanding of the other services that Azure can bring, both around capability, performance, and scale within your business. So that's where we stand from a commercial point of view. I'm going to hand over to Ben and back to Mark. If there's any technical or commercial questions, if you kindly type them in the question window, and then we can get those answered.
Thank you very much for that. So yes, if you do have any questions at all, please do pop those in the questions box and we can go through them. We have had one question come through already. So we've got a question here that says, is StorSimple PSN compliant, e.g. info governance, impact levels, etc. for local government?
Okay, so we do a lot of work within LRG. So first of all, it's on G-Cloud, which is something that's important. With regards to connectivity for maybe people in the edu side, we're also on the edu backbone as well. We are PCI compliant and also FIPS compliant, and we're regulated to official within the Windows Azure data center. So we're compliant to official. We're not quite official sensitive. With regards to the old IL, we're IL2. We're not quite IL3, and obviously we can't automatically reclassify from the old IL compliance to the new certification. So we're certified to official and we're certified to IL2. We're on G-Cloud as well. So hopefully that answers your questions. But we do a lot of business within the LRG space.
Lovely, thank you. And another question here from Martin, who asks, what is the maximum scalable size of the 8600?
Okay, I'll leave that to Mark or Ben to pick up if that's okay.
Thanks, Paul. It's Ben here. So the 8600 is almost comprised of, so as all StorSimple devices do, effectively two parts. You've got the local storage on-premise and the total storage when we consider the cloud part as well. So the 8600 has got 40 terabytes of local storage, and that's a combination of a small amount of SSD and a larger amount of nearline SAS drives. But effectively, the local storage is just used for the hottest and the warmest data. So when we create storage volumes, we do a lot of stuff in metadata. So the 8600 can provision 500 terabytes of storage volumes. So this is what our host servers, whether they're VMware, Hyper-V, Linux, or Windows, can see as being presented from the storage device.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And another question here. If I have a VHD in StorSimple and it's replicated in Azure Cloud, can I spin a new virtual machine in Azure using that VHD file?
So take this one, Ben, or?
Yeah, fire away.
No, sorry. If you were going to jump in, that's fine. I'll let you take that one.
Okay. So if we're using StorSimple to run Hyper-V VMs, either as just individual data stores or CSVs, and you create a virtual machine on it, that VHD is going to effectively it's just going to sit at a number of blocks on the storage device. So we don't actually replicate data per se into the cloud. A VHD, if it's used over a period of time, there's going to be parts of that VHD which are hotter than others and parts which are colder than others. So the StorSimple technology will tier the coldest data into the cloud. So if we want to spin up a virtual machine in Azure using that data, there's a couple of options that we can do. We can either take a full cloud snapshot of a volume and actually and then restore this using a StorSimple virtual appliance in the cloud, or we could use some actually technology that's outside of StorSimple called Azure Site Recovery, which allows us to protect a virtual machine and then replicate that in a traditional sense into Azure. So a couple of different options there.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And another question here. When doing capacity planning and network impact analysis, is there a documented guidance to follow, or will consultancy be required? And is the data pushed to cloud compressed and deduplicated?
So we will do an amount of work during the pre-sales process just to make sure that StorSimple is the right fit and to work out the best workloads to use for StorSimple. So we will do this in conjunction with Bytes and Systems Up. Network capacity planning is always a consideration. So StorSimple is a cloud integrated storage device. So it stands to reason that we need reliable networking and a decent network bandwidth and latency to make this a viable solution. There's a lot of I suppose there's a lot of situations where guidance may vary. So we don't publish, here's the line in the sand, you must do this, because if you've got a lot of data and there's going to be a lot of interaction with the cloud, maybe lots of data churn, then we need to make sure we have a larger pipe, lower latency. And similarly, we could have either a smaller data set or a smaller amount of change, and that would then impact the requirements there. So what I'd say is if talk to your Bytes account manager. They can introduce Mark, the Systems Up guys, the Microsoft guys into the conversations, and we can absolutely have that conversation. And the second part, I think, to the question was around the data push. So all data that leaves the device is deduplicated, compressed, and encrypted.
Okay, lovely, thank you. I think that Paul just had one other thing to add on as well. So Paul, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, just one thing from our side. So, this is a very, very different way of looking at storage and how we interact with storage and how we place storage. So one thing that Microsoft's able to offer in conjunction with Bytes and Systems Up is to provide sort of a data classification or a data workshop where we have the ability to come in and look at the data you have, whether that's us running some tools on your data and coming back with some recommendations, or whether it's around us having this sort of red, amber, green workshop to understand what are the workloads you have, which ones are relevant for StorSimple. We'll obviously put in the green bucket. The ones that we need to understand a bit more, we'll put in the amber bucket, and the ones that definitely are not StorSimple, we'll put in the red bucket. So we're able to help you understand and look at different ways of doing things in association with our partners. So again, if you'd like to take advantage of that and have a further discussion on what we we can do to help you understand your data, then please reach out to your account managers and we can work with them to provide that service to you. So thank you very much, and I'll hand you back to Sarah.
Lovely, thank you very much. So that's all of the questions that we've had come through today. As I mentioned, we will obviously make sure that the recording is sent out to you all. And please do take the time to fill in the critique form, because that is your perfect opportunity to let us know what you want to find out more about, so that we can follow up with you in the right way. You should have had all the contact details for the relevant people that were on the call, so there was details there for Mark and for Ben, so please do feel free to get in touch with them as well. Thank you very much to Paul, Ben and Mark for presenting for us today, and thank you very much for your time this morning.